Okay. I think it's recording. Are you seeing that on your end?
No, I'm not. Is the button red?
Yes, the button is red.
Okay, we'll trust that it's recording.
I can throw it back over to you if you want to check and make sure.
Why don't you do that, because the file
shows recording.
Sure. Who was that?
It's showing recording on my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, flashing red.
Okay. If the file comes to you, then you'll just have to email it to me, and then we'll work through that. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So are we okay, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great.
Now you got to get back to your PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you. So I just thought it might be helpful as we go through tonight and next Thursday and through these different PLC topics, if we all just think about the good old-fashioned KWL, which is a graphic organizer that we're all familiar with. We already have a lot of things in that K column. All of us already know things about PLCs, and they might be the same things or different things, not only from our text readings, but from our own experiences. But we should also think, what are those additional things we'd like to understand about professional learning communities? And I think every night I'd like for us to reflect on what is something new that we've learned about professional communities from our presenters, from our text, from our discussions. So I thought that would be a good way for us to approach it. And we are going to start with Carrie, who's going to lead us for a 20-minute or so discussion on just a basic introduction to PLCs. So Carrie, I'm going to stop on my end, and Dr. Boyles is going to help you. Do you have any kind of media or anything you'd like for us to view as you're presenting? Carrie?
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. I was unmuting my button.
All right. Well, let me turn things back over to Dr. Boyles, and he will assist you with that.
Okay. Okay. Hang on just a second. All right, Carrie, I'm going to make you the host. And consequently, what you'll need to do is open your, where you have a PowerPoint.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, open your PowerPoint. And then if you'll hover with your cursor down at the bottom of the box with everybody's pictures, smiling faces, you'll see share screen. And if you'll click on the share screen, it should open up a graphic that will include your PowerPoint. And
okay.
You'll double click on your PowerPoint, and the rest of us should be able to see it. All right, you started sharing, it says. So hang on.
Good morning, everybody, shouted Jack. Oh, what a big puddle, he exclaimed, pulling back quickly.
There we go. Now you should be able to go to your slideshow and start it from the beginning, just like you normally would. Everybody can see Carrie's PowerPoint, can't you? I can. So if you'll go right to the, there you go. You're ready to go.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Carrie,
Okay.
Carrie,
Yes.
Carrie, I can hear you, but I'm also hearing a radio or something in the background. You might want to turn that down just a little.
Oh, I stopped it. It was my son's program.
Okay.
Hopefully I won't deviate too much from the topic today, but it's our introduction to professional learning communities. My name is Carrie Morrison, and of course, our instructors, Dr. Boyles and Dr. Abernathy. Initially, our public schools were originally organized according to the concepts and principles of the factory model, hence the little thing in the background. The prevalent organizational model of the late 19th century, late 19th and early 20th centuries, according to Richard Dufour et al. I had a small video that I wanted you all to look at real quick before I went into anything else for it. Let me go ahead and play that for you.
just single click on that. If you want to leave your PowerPoint running, you just single click on that link and it should play for us.
Schools that were created in the United States. What were those schools? It was that one teacher responsible for the education of those kids. As we grew a bit, and we couldn't get all those kids in one-room schoolhouse anymore, we began building bigger schools, and we made those schools up of one-room schoolhouses, where each classroom, in effect, functioned as that isolated teacher still working in a one-room schoolhouse.
What is a PLC? It's an ongoing process. It's a never-ending journey of continuous improvement. It becomes the way we do things around here. Collectively, we're exploring new concepts, new ideas. We're building shared knowledge on what we know today to be best practice in terms of education. And then we're testing out that learning in action research in our own setting to see whether or not that concept we studied or that practice we've all agreed to implement, does it work? Does it work for us and for our kids?
The course that we've designed is really intended for anyone with an interest and a role in education. It's certainly going to be a very, very useful resource to those educational leaders who are trying to figure out ways to improve their schools and meet the increasing demands being placed upon schools. We also think it's going to be useful to classroom teachers to give them a better understanding of how this process can make their job something that is actually doable.
As we are laying the solid foundation of a professional learning community at work, you know we've addressed the mission pillar. Why do we exist? The vision, what's the futuristic hope of the organization we're trying to become? The collective commitments piece, how must we behave in order to become that school of the shared vision and mission we've articulated? And then finally, the last pillar, the goals pillar. And the goals pillar answers a very different question. It answers the question, which steps must we take and when will we take those steps in order to move closer and closer to that mission of high levels of learning for all?
I believe that teachers should take this course because Rick and Becky DeFore are the foremost experts in the professional learning community in the world. And it's going to be hands-on, it's going to be practical, and more important than any of those things, it's going to help your kids learn at higher levels.
You know, professional learning communities has had a significant impact at my current school at Hanover Heights. When I first arrived to Sharma District 54, we were second to last in terms of our performance. And over the last 4 years, our performance has just skyrocketed. It improves student learning outcomes. The bottom line is we gauge our successes in our system based on the results of our kids. And we've seen tremendous achievement gains as a result of us becoming a more collaborative system as a whole.
You're just so supported by everybody. And as an administrator, I feel so supported amongst my own administrative colleagues because we're all speaking the same language and working together.
And with that, in terms of speaking the same language, I'm going to just pick up here in terms of putting what was just presented to you in that video in context. Like they said, initially schools were just seen as factories. You know, our students were the raw materials. They were educated by batches. And to be honest, they're still educated by batches because right now, if the child isn't 4 by a certain age, they can't start school anyway. And they continue in that grade level until they leave. They were to be shaped to meet the needs of the society. So it was more of, to an extent, we're doing the same thing now, but it's a different perspective, and I'll talk about that in a second. There was a certain level of uniformity and standardization as to what is being taught for everybody, and teachers were just seen as being responsible to just carry out whatever they were directed to do. So like the force said, schools were focused on procedures and not necessarily on results. Now, for us, what did this mean, you know, in terms of how effective was this for our society? At the time, those kind of schools, it didn't really improve. It didn't provide any rigor and relevance for the students. The factory model setting did not accommodate the various learning styles that our students have. For myself, for example, I'm a very visual learner and some are very hands-on. It didn't prepare our students for the world that we're living in, which is constantly changing. And we hear a lot about preparing students to be globally competitive. And that was not being done at the time. And it did not really give teachers the support that they needed to really grow professionally. So, of course, you know, we need to have some level of change. And As Newman and Wellich stated, if schools wanted to enhance their organizational capacity to boost student learning, they should work on building a professional community that is characterized by a shared purpose, by collaborative activity, and by collaborative responsibility among staff. A quick video that I wanted you all to look at where that was concerned, if I can get to it here. Probably won't. Maybe from here. That little cursor up top is getting on my nerve. Don't want to close y'all out. Let's try it this way. There you go. Sorry about the delay. He mentioned something in this talk before that really made me think in terms of, you know, sometimes when it comes to change, while in high school, we talk about something called resistance to change and how would the society really react to the need for that professional learning community to kind of facilitate the needs of teachers per se.
For those who question why we should have professional learning communities, I think the answer is relatively simple. There's never been greater consensus about what it's going to require of educators in order to improve student learning in all of their schools. Virtually all of the leading educational researchers in North America and all of our professional organizations have agreed that our best hope for improving schools is to focus on developing the capacity of the people within the schools. There's just been an international study done by the McKinsey Group by Sir Michael Barber where they looked at the highest performing school systems in all of the world. And they said that the one thing that those systems had in common was an understanding that a system can only be as good as the people within it. And so in those high-performing systems, there was a conscious effort made to develop the capacity of those people to understand that the only way we're going to improve schools is by improving the quality of the instruction that students receive every single day through the collective efforts of their teachers and school leaders. So to those who had asked the question, why PLCs, I would ask, why not? What else is out there that has such universal consensus in terms of its power to make a difference in the lives of students? The biggest obstacles that are interfering with schools moving from traditional schools really a lack of resource. The biggest obstacle is overcoming our own traditions and the mythology that persists in education. Mythology that says things like the way to improve schools is by hiring heroic individual teachers who close their door and make a difference in the lives of their students and are sort of indifferent to what else is going on around the school. A mythology that says the real purpose of schooling is merely to give students the opportunity to learn rather to ensure that they learn. So there are some long-standing traditions in American education that we must confront, and we must overcome them if we're going to succeed in becoming professional learning communities and making a difference in the lives of our students. There are now over 150 different schools on the All Things PLC website, and every one.
Have a quick question for everyone before you go any further. Think about your own schools. Like he just mentioned, where you always have in that school somebody that's like your go-to person in terms of educating kids. Because let's be honest, society is evolving with being globally competitive, to talk about how we are in terms of math and science in comparison to the entire world. When we think of the schools that we looked at when we had the last class with Dr. Abernathy and Dr. Boyles, where you see everybody making that constant change. One thing that I saw that was consistent across the board was the support that teachers needed in order to respond to the changing needs in society. But think about your own school. How easy was it for your district or your school to really embrace professional learning communities and get it started, get it off the ground, and get it consistently going? Anyone?
Carrie, I don't think it's necessarily an easy process. It's an ongoing constructive process. And getting people to buy into and as your faculty turns over and changes, that's a continuous thing for us to update. But on the book, it's something that it's an ongoing.
Door open and closed.
Yeah, the doors open and closed. But yes, it is an ongoing process. I had a hard time hearing you, Bill. I don't know if it's my microphone or not.
Might
What
be
is
me. Is that better? Is that any better?
Yeah, that's a little better now.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I'll speak up.
I'm gonna just continue because, like I said, Bill, I can hardly hear you, but I was trying to get y'all in terms of the discussion for professional learning communities and what were some of the feedbacks y'all have in terms of getting it off the ground. Yes, it is ongoing, but I'm gonna just continue and finish up because everybody seemed quiet tonight.
Carrie, Carrie, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Carrie, I was going to say, I'm the new principal at a school, and I am facing this challenge right now where I am trying to get professional learning communities up and running, and it is challenging just because I'm trying to build that collaboration and build that culture where teachers have that trust with one another. And what I'm finding is that many or just in isolation in very small teams or very small pockets. So getting that up and running has been very challenging, but it's also been exciting. Vertical teamings and things. So slowly but surely, I see things starting to change, and they're starting to feel more comfortable with one another and with me. So that's what I was thinking as I was listening to your presentation.
Carrie?
While researching for this introduction to PL profession, yes, we try and focus more on student learning, but at the end of the day, it boils back down to that school that you have in terms of the dynamics of the individuals that's there. And in your case, with you being a new principal, they may have had a certain culture prior to you getting there. And then that's something you have to work through. And I found it very interesting just looking at different things as I look at different districts. The success for professional learning communities goes back a lot to just that school culture. It's good to have everything clear. It's good to have your visions and goals clearly stated for your staff. But at the end of the day, it really does go back to, one, the need of your school, how the teachers view it prior to you getting there. And then while you're there, building that culture that sustains that growth. One of the things that I've seen here, which I have on the slide, is that professional learning communities, one of the things we have to do is have a shared vision, mission, values, and I won't go into details with that because that's more of Laura's presentation, collective inquiry. They are action-oriented, they are results-driven, and there has to be assessment in terms of what was done and how it's beneficial to all. At the end of the day, how have students benefited from this PLC? How do we meet their needs and still think about what's going on in society and make sure that everything is encompassed into it? A food for thought that I have is that professional learning communities are basically in response to the evolution of human resources and what we basically need when students graduate from school. It is in response to the changing needs that teachers have as well. One has to look at what we are doing now and how we can help teachers to meet the ever-changing needs of their students. We're preparing kids basically for jobs that we don't even know exist yet. And then at the end of the day, right now, here and now, we got to figure out, how do I get through? I have my vision in my head as to what I want my PLCs to look like. How do I share that vision and get it through to my staff, to my district at large as well? I saw this video and I found it very, very interesting, and I thought I would share it with you guys because I do believe it's something that you could probably relate to in terms of the ever-changing needs that we have as a society, as a school district, and just as the world at large.
country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not. It's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? You know, I mean, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, you know, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity. It was driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. That real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally, what we come to think of as academic ability. And this is deep in the gene pool of public education, that there are really two types of people, academic and non-academic, smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind. So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who have benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Instead, they suffer this. This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescriptions for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and pediatricians think there is such a thing, but it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we had our tonsils taken out, and on the same whimsical basis and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention. Every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising holdings, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? Boring stuff. At school, for the most part. It seems to me not a coincidence totally that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardized testing. These kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder increases as you travel east across the country. People start losing interest in Oklahoma. They can hardly think straight in Arkansas. And by the time they get to Washington, they've lost it completely. And there are separate reasons for that, I believe. It's a fictitious epidemic. If you think of it, the arts, and I don't say this exclusively of the arts, I think it's also true of science and of maths. But I say about the art particularly because they are the victims of this mentality currently, particularly. The arts especially address the idea of aesthetic experience. An aesthetic experience is one in which your senses are operating at their peak when you're...
Sorry to interrupt you guys. Can you hear me? The word that we just ended with was experience. And when we think about PLC, we're thinking about the experience of both the students and the teachers per se. We're looking at that conceptual framework in which we're trying to transform the school, support teachers, and then give the support that is needed even to the community as well, so we can meet the needs of our students in an ever-changing world. People look at stuff in so many different ways, but how do we strike a balance and get teaching and learning going and still meet the needs of our students, and yet still build efficacy and get teachers involved? And for professional learning communities, at the end of the day, that's what their role should be. How do we meet the needs of teachers? How do we meet the needs of students? And how do we get the ball rolling and yet still have everybody on the same page? Quotation mark when I say same page, because like I said, we're all different learners. And how do we move past different barriers through PLCs with teaching and learning and yet still be globally competitive? Does anyone have any questions or any comments at this time? What is it doing? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Well, Carrie, I want to thank you. That was a great presentation. You stayed within our time allotment. I think it was about 21 minutes long, so thank you for that. Also, great graphics. Love the different embedded media you had there, and I think it will lend itself to some additional reflection, and we'll do that at the end of Lori's presentation as well. But just want to thank you for getting us off to a good start, Carrie.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Boyles, I think I'm going to switch it around. I think instead of going back to my reflection, I think I'm going to go ahead and let Lori present, and then I'll draw some connections and conclusions at the end of both presentations. Is that okay with you?
Very fine. Carrie, I need you to go to at the bottom of your screen where it says participants. Everybody watch this because you're all going to have to do this at one point. Go at the bottom where it says participants, and if you'll open that, click on that, and it should come up, and I should be at the top. And if you'll highlight my name, well, hang on, I can do it from here. Hang on, let me just do it. Y'all don't need to do that. I can do it myself. No need to run you through that. So I have now control. And so now, Lori, I'm going to move over and give you control.
Terrific.
And you will go ahead and open up your PowerPoint. And you are now our host. And it'll take it just a minute to cycle there.
Okay.
And we got your PowerPoint, and so you can go and show it like you normally would, and we have it up, and so you're good to go.
Terrific. Okay. Hi, everybody. My presentation is on the foundations of the PLC, and it looks like Carrie and I were very much on the same page because I have the same before video starting mine off in terms of why PLCs and why now. So I'll just skip right over that for the sake of time. And we'll start talking about how you build the foundation of a PLC. And let's see, my laptop is a little sensitive. And let me preface it by saying I got cut off. I lost my connection a couple of times. So I moved locations in my house, and hopefully that won't happen in the middle. In any case, DeFore and Eaker talk about 4 foundational pillars to PLCs. The first being the mission, the purpose, why do we exist? The second, the vision, what do we hope to become? our values, how must we behave in order to make our shared vision a reality, and finally our goals, which steps will we take first and when. And I'm hoping this will work. I'm going to ask that we exit the full screen and see if you can open a second window with that Today's Meet link, todaysmeet.com/school mission. And hopefully we can all type in right there. Is that working? Is everybody able to do that? If you minimize, and I know I can defer to Bill because I think Bill's our tech expert here.
I'm actually cheating, Laura. I think a few minutes.
You are so garbled, Bill. It's like a cartoon. It's really cute.
I believe Bill's had something to drink.
I don't know, guys.
Bill's got something going on in his coffee mug, huh?
Yeah, I could hardly hear him. I thought it was just me.
Bill,
He's on. I'd like to have some of it.
Bill, try turning off.
You and me both, Scott.
Bill, try turning off your camera and see if we get a better. If you're using up too much bandwidth for your image, your video, and see if that'll help. Can you do that? Talk to us now.
Is that better?
Hey, sound like
Great.
yourself.
That is great.
I've got
Well,
two computers running because the other one wasn't cooperating right now. So
I think that's what it is. You're eating up all your bandwidth at home, and that's we're not able to get to you. The string is a little bit frayed from your house to ours.
well, I'll work on that right now and fix that.
There you go. Oh, that's much better.
Okay, so is everybody able to get into todaysmeet.com/school mission? You'd have to open it in a second window because you're not going to be able to obviously type in my presentation. But I'd like you to take a minute and just jot down. You can put in any name. You don't have to put your real name. But just jot down your school's mission statement or your district's mission statement. And we'll just take a minute or two to do that. And if you don't know it, you can write, I can't remember, I don't know. That's fine too. That'll lead to more discussion. Thanks, Fred. That's fine.
Laurie, I'm on an iPad and I'm unable to get to that.
Okay, that's fine. And we can talk about, if people just want to jump in. I was trying to insert some different technology tools, but if we want to just talk about it, if everybody wants to chime in with your mission statement, that'd be great as well.
Mine is building the future, ... now.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie. Anybody else? I'm asking because I'm sorry, go ahead.
I tried to join and I typed it in, but when I click say, it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, you can just, you can share with us, Carrie, that's fine. Has anybody else typed in and just not had it populate?
I'm gonna try Firefox, see if that helps.
Okay. And I don't want to belabor this point. If people have things they want to add, I had a conversation with a principal the other day. She had been leading her school for 3 years, and she wanted me to help her devise a new mission and vision for the school. And I asked her what the mission had been for the last 3 years. And she looked at me with a blank expression on her face and shrugged her shoulders and said, I really don't know. So I wanted to share that experience. And we've got another from Fran. Thanks. And I think this will work if I pull this up. I pulled some, you all can see that, I pulled some mission statements from schools throughout North Carolina to take a look at. And at our last class, I had a short conversation with Danita and with Bill about whether mission and vision work was meaningful and whether it could be action oriented. So I thought just having this conversation about, whether we can even recall our school and our district's mission statement could lead us to the importance of really building this foundation. Does anybody want to share anything? I know I've captured a couple of your mission statements in this document. It's funny because as I've worked for 4 or 5 different schools and districts, and I don't know that I can recall any of them specifically. The one organization I've worked for in which I can really recite and has become a part of me, the mission statement was Teach for America. And that's something that, was what drew me to the organization in the first place. So that's something that has really remained paramount in my memories. We'll keep going from there.
I'll say this, Lori. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay. The mission that I just put up there for Neal Middle School is our current mission, but we're in the process of, we're going through the collaborative process of redoing our mission right now. I will say that I think our new mission is a much shorter and much more meaningful to the whole staff. I'm sure that after, we just comprised the mission last week, and I actually don't have it with me. It's actually in our school improvement plan template, and I don't have access to that right at this moment. But I do think that our new mission will be something that I will be able to remember. I actually had to Google our old one, and try to figure out what it was, because I just didn't have it right in front of me. But I do think it's very important to know your mission and your vision so that it's something that you hold really true to. And so right now, I think we've been doing that, but it's just something that everyone does not know.
Well, and Danita's there now. Danita's point was that she's really, if I might speak for you, Danita, was that she was really action oriented and didn't the mission piece felt more like fluff, I think is what you were saying, Danita. Is that pretty accurate?
You got it.
Okay. So let me see if I can get back to my presentation. Let's see if I can find that.
Lori?
Yes, please.
Yeah, if I could just add, I love what you said and what the other participants have said just about how much time is put into it and whether anybody really knows what it is. And I was reminded when in the text around page 79 and 80, when they are laying out the steps of how to revise or even write an effective mission, vision, so forth. About 2 years ago, I was one of 2 people who had to lead the strategic reworking in our entire school system, and myself and this other person were to lead the process to write the new mission and the new vision for the Gaston County schools. And it was about a year-long process. And I would tell all of you, you would never believe how much time goes into choosing just the right words. I mean, hours and hours to decide if it should say the or those, or successful or improved, or just finding just the right words. And then after all that work, if you lined up 100 people, parents, students, teachers, principals, and said, what is it? Probably 80% of them really wouldn't know. So there can be a huge disconnect.
Yeah, you're right, because we had something similar to that at school the other day, where we looked at our specific mission and we had an activity with the teachers. And you'd be so surprised at the verbiage, the different wording that they came up with. So you're right where that's concerned.
Lori, I took a little bit different approach when I had my superintendent hat on, and I gave our administrators a test, and said write it, and I said how many can write it, and probably half could write it, and then I said I'm going to give you the same test again when we meet again next month, and the next month everybody could write it. And so then we began to have a discourse through the time about using it as a filter. I remember the Mooresville Graded School District will partner with the community to create meaningful learning experiences to equip students for success in a rapidly changing world. They knew it, and we used that as a filter then when we made decisions and had discussions. Tell me how that equips students for success in a rapidly changing world. So,
well,
that's been my experience with it.
Absolutely. I'll go back to that document. There was one I've heard, I don't know if John is on the webinar or not, but I believe his district's is this: our new mission is to implement bold strategies, fund big ideas, and engage the community to increase excellence with equity for all children at school. And I've heard John reference that in our conversations in classes, and that seems to really resonate for him and for the leaders and the teachers in his district. So I'd love to, I'm eager to talk to him a little bit more about that. I don't think I saw his name here. Let me go back there. Oops, I don't want to lose. Well, we'll just cancel and let's see if I can get back to it. Okay. From there, I don't know if you all are familiar with Simon Sinek's work. He is a leadership expert. He has worked for the RAND Corporation, advising on military innovation and planning. And he has an interesting take. I was reading at the beginning of this chapter, DeFore and Eaker reference a quotation from Bardwick that talks about the most important question any organization can ask is, what is the business of our business? And although Sinek is coming from the business world in another perspective, I think it's a long video, so I'm just going to play about 3-4 minutes of it. But I think it's an interesting reference point as we're talking about building mission and vision. So I think it'll probably have a commercial that I'm going to try to get out of. Let's see. Do you have the sound and everything okay there?
It's good.
Okay, let's see if I can move it up just a little bit to my starting place. Let's see. Was at 16. Of course, I went too far. Let's start. We'll start right at the beginning of the TED Talk, and I'll start.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because it's easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Yeah. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we're better. And we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one?
I'll stop it there. If you get a chance to watch the rest of the video, though, I think it's worthwhile. So any thoughts about the application of this video to our work in schools?
Hey, our school just purchased the rights to this program. Mm-hmm. And since the principal who I'm working for now, it's her second year, and she really wants to work on the mission and vision, this was going to be her beginning. So she actually, I want to say it was pretty expensive. It was like $100 a person for a license to do this. But so far we've done the first introduction. Actually, it's pretty impressive program, impressive guy.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Anyone else?
Yeah, Lori, I think, can you hear me now?
I can. Yeah, that's great, Bill. Thanks.
Awesome. I've only reset the computer like 3 times now. I think that we often forget about this. We're so wrapped up in the business of trying to educate students that often we get frustrated and we forget about the reason we're really there is the students. And, we're fighting around some of the other peripheral things with the legislature and the curriculum and pacing guides and all the rest of that. And sometimes we forget about this. So this is great stuff to refresh and start the year. And we just started doing this at our school again this year.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else want to add anything?
Lori, not on this topic, but one of his books that really is kind of a different approach is Leaders Eat Last. If you're
yes.
Read, it's a good one. I don't know if you've read it, but commend it to the rest of the class if you haven't read Leaders Eat Last. It's about specifically about a lot about military leaders, but some of you military guys would appreciate it. But good read.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Boyles. DeFore and Eker do on page 58, they talk about the why do we exist and reference that. Let's see if I can keep this going. They say that we must go beyond the cliches in examining our current beliefs and assumptions about the mission of education. We can't be content with a half-hearted affirmation of our belief that all students can learn. Instead, we must challenge ourselves to answer the tougher questions. What is it we expect our students to learn, and how will we fulfill our collective responsibility? Which at first glance appear to be those outer circles in Sinek's golden circles, but really get at why, the why being at the center. and that the mission statements that don't answer those questions will contribute very little to the creation of a learning community. You know, I struggled as a Red Sox fan to put a Yankee up on the screen. But the collective vision, I think Yogi Bear's quote, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else, it really resonates for me. And it's a question of how do we develop a collective vision in a school or in a school system as a superintendent. If we don't have that compelling vision, it's a major obstacle. We've got all these competing priorities. How do we go about doing that? How do you do it at your schools? Dr. Boyle shared about getting people on board and understanding what the vision was. Dr. Abernathy talked about the process, the year-long process. Have any of you been involved in that at your school level or at on a larger scale in schools or in another organization?
Lori, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Barry.
Yeah, I was saying, I was principal at my last school. We every year struggled with the why. Why do we exist?
Mm-hmm.
Because as you know, in our situation, my staff would always ask me, well, are we here to change behaviors or are we here to educate? And or are we here to do both? And the consensus was we couldn't really do both to the best of our ability. If our why was to change behaviors and focus on behavior, well, then we could put all our energy in there and work with the students that way. If it's academics, we're trying to put all of our focus on academics, well, then we're going to lose a lot on the behavior. And the issue I had was, since I had no real guidance as to what we were really there for, we made it up. We made it on our own, but that doesn't really work. The school could have its own vision, but if it doesn't meet the district level vision for what it is, then we're kind of all just spinning our wheels, and that's one of the biggest struggles we had. We did develop a vision, we did develop a mission, but again, it was in a vacuum. Really, it wasn't a cohesive, that it fit into what somebody, it didn't fit into a larger goal. At least I didn't think so.
And unfortunately, Barry, I don't think that's an isolated experience. I think that happens probably in schools and in districts, throughout our country.
Right. And Dr. Boyles mentioned something, he talked about a military example. These kind of things never happen. Well, they never happen in good units. And, Bill can maybe talk from a Navy perspective, but from an Army perspective, this kind of situation does not occur in the military because it can't, because lives are on the line. A lower level unit can't create its own mission and vision if it doesn't meet the highest ranking commander's vision, because they control the battlefield, and everything everybody else does has to be in line. Their mission, their vision has to be in line with what the overall commander's vision and mission is, because he's the one who controls the battlefield. And I guess I know that's maybe a difficult term to use in the civilian world, but if we think of a school system as a school system rather than a system of schools, well, we all should be fitting. Every vision and mission, I think, should fit the overall collective mission and vision, and then we tailor it to our own, but it doesn't deviate that much from from the highest level command, I guess.
I think that's a great analogy, Barry. Thanks.
Yeah, it is a great analogy. I think one of the differences with the school versus the military is we have the propensity. I think our staff understand the mission, they understand the vision, but when they close that door, the fidelity of how it's carried out is a whole lot different than in the military example. And that's one of the hard barriers to break down. You can explain it to them, they can understand it, but if they choose to close the door and do what they want to do, then that's what they're going to do.
That's great, Bill, and I think that leads to some of the different scenarios they talk about in how visions are created. There's the telling mentality where a boss assumes he or she knows what the vision should be, and it's dictatorial, it's top down, my way or the highway. There's the selling way that it's developed. The boss assumes they know best, and they try to persuade everybody. Some people approach it by having an idea, looking for some feedback and trying it out. There's the consultant scenario, in which they do form a committee and they're asked to develop a vision for the boss to review, but then there's still that the boss can accept it or can reject it. And then the fifth scenario is the co-creating, which is a collaborative process that really develops a shared vision, but it's absolutely not efficient. It's most likely to have the most impact, but it just takes, as Dr. Abernathy was referencing, an absorbent amount of time. It's funny, I've experienced just in this last year schools at the telling stage and a school at the co-creating stage, and the impact is just incredible to watch at that co-creating level, the buy-in and the changes that are happening already in that community. So I guess I'd ask you, where's your school with that? Where do you think most people are, and why?
Lori?
Yes.
Before one of our participants responds to that excellent question, I would just add, you said your experience in seeing the school, the telling and the co-creating, and I would say that probably the teachers in both of those schools can tell you or can memorize what that ultimate vision was, but only the teachers in that co-creating situation are also internalizing that vision in their hearts and in their minds and in their motivation for everything they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would anyone else like to add? I'm realizing I have my stopwatch going and I'm past my 20 minutes, so I'll try to keep us moving. There were a couple of points I wanted to get everybody engaged in some conversation. So please feel free, Dr. Boyle and Dr. Abernathy, to slow me down or speed me up or cut me off.
I think if you want to take maybe about 6 more minutes, we should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple, just a quick cartoons around vision or vision that may have gone awry that I just thought made sense for us to take a look at. Again, looking at which is the telling up here, that, wow, that's a great vision you have for your people with everybody. The rowboat going in different directions, and then the dressed for success. So before the research, DeFore and Inker say that before we do anything, we should look at what the research tells us about good schools and successful improvement initiatives. Rather than take too long on this, I think we all know at the doctoral level, we know the research on the characteristics of effective schools. We've got, well, I won't consult and read them to you. We'll just, if I hadn't put this flowing in from the left, I think I could get through the slide quicker. The research on the indicators of a productive school culture, the predispositions, when we're looking at a student-centered orientation and improvement orientation, having high expectations overall, collaborative behaviors, and certainly the professional productivity, our strong knowledge base that's developed by staff development, our sense of group goals, group commitments. And then the research of Perkey and Smith on the characteristics of effective schools. Structural variables being the school site management, strong leadership, those kinds of things, and process variables being things like a sense of community and the shared goals, again, order, discipline. And we have one more on research on successful school restructuring again. Let me move through this quickly so we can get to how effective vision statements. Let me stop there because I do love this. I love Mandela's quote, and I think this interconnectivity is so important. This action without vision is only passing time. And wanted to just take a minute to think about that. Again, I was in a school recently, a grade level team, in which they did an activity similar to a Myers-Briggs personality inventory. It was the personality compass, and each area of the room, north, south, east, and west, represents a personality: the action-oriented, the speculating, caring, and then the detail oriented. And this first grade team had no one on the action side. Nobody was north oriented in that personality. And it's interesting, they had lots and lots of vision. But as I reflected with the principal, she realized this is the team that doesn't want to submit lesson plans. They can't quite get their vision down on paper. And so this quote really resonated with me, thinking about it. Really, they have to work together. They've got the greatest vision in the world, but they're not going to get anywhere if they can't put it down and get moving in the same direction. And then how do you create effective vision statements? What are the components of effective vision statements? I'll stop and let other folks speak on that. Any ideas?
Well, Laura, I went to an organization I had restarted that had been dormant for a while, and we took part in a workshop, and it was put on by a expert in developing, for nonprofit organizations, developing, and I'm taking a long time to say this, developing mission statements and vision statements. And he said that a mission statement, a vision statement, if it should not be any more than 15 words, he said no one will remember. No one remembers after 15 words. So I'd say word count is part of an effective mission statement.
Great, thank you. And they say communicable. Absolutely. Anybody else?
Lori, I think a key to remember is let's make sure that we don't confuse what a mission statement and a vision statement is. Sometimes I think it's easy to get them mixed up.
Absolutely.
In fact, I'll be honest with you. At one point in time, we did our advanced ed accreditation again, and we had to create our mission statement and our vision statement, and we even still have it on our door. And it was pointed out to me. Guy that was in there at our offices, I actually work with his wife, and he's a principal at another school in another district, and he looked at it and he goes, you ever noticed that your vision statement and your mission statement kind of are flipped over? And I said, Wayne, I'll be honest, I haven't. And I looked at it and I said, you know what, I think you're right. And that's the thing I think that sometimes we get caught in is what is a mission statement supposed to be? What is it designed to do, and focusing in on how that is supposed to look, and making sure that it isn't, because I think we have that overall vision and we want to use that as the guide as what we want, but we forget of what the mission's designed to do, to take us to that point. And I think sometimes we flip them around. And I think sometimes that's something to be careful of when you're creating your vision statements and making it effective, is making sure it isn't too mission-y, if that's a word you could use.
I think you're absolutely right, Scott. I think we do. We get so caught up in compliance and getting it done for a grant application or for our school improvement plan or for our website, and we don't often put the time in to really use it as a driving force and to build that foundation that's going to propel our PLTs and PLCs forward. I'm sorry, Dr. Abernathy, did I cut you off?
No, I was just shaking my head. I liked what Scott said. That's spot on.
And that's what, Cotter says. They should be imaginable, desirable, feasible, focused, as Scott says, flexible, and Barry's point that you can communicate them. I went back to that same, I moved it. Sorry, changed pages. Why establish them? We've been having this conversation. They are going to propel us forward. They're promoting high levels of loyalty. If we've got the right values, I'm sorry, I jumped to values. Why are core values important to an organization? I've only worked for a couple in which they've been identified. And I'm sorry, I should have taken more time with this. I was trying to rush through for sake of time. I apologize. But I'm wondering, as I looked through online at different schools throughout the state of North Carolina's mission and vision statements, there were only a couple that identified organizational values. Do your schools have organizational values outlined and identified?
The two systems with which I worked had mission, vision, and value statements.
Thanks, Dr. Boyles.
We do as well.
Great. Anybody else?
I'd hasten to add, I do think I think our people embraced the mission statement, the vision, and I think they believe the values and they live the values, but I'm not sure they could communicate the values as easily without, a reminder.
Sure.
They developed them. We had broad-based involvement in the development of them in both systems, but I think it's more complicated. The values are more complicated piece to do, and I think that's why, as you've said, a lot of systems don't go there. They don't go that far.
There was one school I led in which I inherited a set of values. It was a small elementary school, and the values were show respect, work hard, be kind. And that was what really drove the importance of it home for me, because those were values for our students, for our staff, for our community members, and we were able, with those 3 simple statements, to incorporate it in all we did, from the kindergarten on up to the 5th grade, to a parent outside on the playground, who may have made a choice that wasn't representative of our school community. And I wasn't brilliant enough to come up with that on my own. As I said, I inherited it, but it really was powerful. We used it in award ceremonies. The kids started giving awards to other children based on demonstrations of respect. I had students come up to me and say, Ms. Carr, I really want to give an award for kindness to so-and-so's mother because she helped me in the morning. I dropped something and she helped me carry it in. And so I saw the power again at a really tiny elementary school, and that stayed with me, thinking about what power it could have in a much larger school and in an entire school system. So I will rush through these last couple of slides for you, just around, again, the purpose of organizational values. I went back to that same cartoon, and I'll save that story for another day. But there's a good summary, and I'm sorry, here I was trying to add all these animations, and they have just added way too much. I'm not sure if I can skip more quickly to the goals portion. We know the common mistakes we make in school improvement goals. Too many of them, or too general, they're not measurable. We've talked about the importance of SMART goals, and we've talked about how goals can really propel a school forward again. And the last, let's see if I can get there, goodness. The last was just, I think, a good image of the 4 pillars, just a good overview for reflection on each component and what it stands for. As Scott said, we get confused oftentimes between them and how they're connected, and what their role is in our PLC. And I just thought, for the person who is presenting on making the shift next week, that had me giggling. So I'll leave it right there for everybody.
Bravo, Lori. Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions or comments for Lori? Well, thank you. And is it back to me now, Dr. Boyles?
It will be in just a second.
I'll tell you what, everybody, I think we have gotten off to a great start. I think both of our presenters tonight did an amazing job and gave us a great overview of their topics and laid a great foundation and base for our further discussions. I have some additional reflections and thoughts and sort of summary of both these topics, but what I have decided to do is I think I might use that as a launch for next week, just to remind us about what we spoke about tonight and get us into our topics for next week. We did run a little over, but you know what? I think it was a good use of our time, Lori, because just like our strategic plans in our school, you were talking to us about the strategic underpinnings of PLCs, and I think that's very important. So thank you, and thank Carrie for 2 great presentations. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the content part of tonight, and Dr. Boyles, let's take care of some housekeeping. Let's see if we can get a switch out on Fred and Bill's topic, And if you want to remind them about the reading and just a few housekeeping moving forward, I think that'll be the best plan for tonight.
Okay. Let me share one thing just while I'm thinking about it. If you all, Carrie and Laurie, if you'll send those PowerPoints to me, email them to me, I'll post them in this week's folder so that folks can have them. I think that's one of the good things about doing these is I know all of you are at different stages with your PLC development. And so if you can get some resources that you can use in your schools that you can share with each other, I certainly think that's a value of the class to be able to use those. As you talk about your mission and vision, as you talk about PLCs, you can use these if you're at that point, even, you know, this year, next year, in the future. So having those.
If it's helpful,
so I'll put them each week. If you'll send them to me, I'll put them in the current week's folder.
Will do, sir.
Okay, great. The other thing, before we kind of straighten out this or try and figure out this other presentation schedule, we do have a couple of chapters to read for next time, DeFore Chapter 7 and Acre Chapter 1. You should be working on your research papers. You got a few more weeks on that. And then you should be now into your working on your system reform plans, certainly in the beginning stages at least of your needs assessments as you're looking at working on that, making contacts. You all know how it is. It's sometimes hard to get those people that work at the central office like Dr. Abernathy to respond to you when you're trying to get some help on these projects. And so don't wait till the last minute to do that. Be getting that now so that you can get that work done, do your needs assessment. And again, as I've said in class, make it meaningful. Make it something that hopefully will get your name in front of a crowd of people in your school district to really help promote you as a school leader so that we'll see your name in greater positions of responsibility as we move down the road. So, do know you want to see if you can figure out this presentation schedule, Dr. Abernathy, and that'll be all we need to do tonight.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, and Bill, but as I understand it, you two will not be able to present on changing the culture next Thursday. So is there a group from October 8th, I believe that is, or October 15th that is able to flip-flop with Bill and Fred? Oh, and Fred, there was another Thursday you weren't going to be available, right?
No, I was thinking October 1st, but I forgot we don't have class that day.
Okay. Is there another group? And if there's not, I don't want to pressure anybody. If there's not another group that can flip-flop, we have a plan B and a plan C. But are there any of the groups that come on October 8th or October 15th that could instead present next Thursday?
Dr. Abernathy, we lost you there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Say what you just said again. We lost you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is there a group that's presenting on October 8th or October 15th? And what I said was I don't want anybody to feel pressured. If there's no groups that feel comfortable moving forward to next week, then that's fine. But is there anybody who feels like they could be prepared and ready to present next week? Fran or Jamie or John, Scott, Kevin, Tammy, Carla, Barry. Any of those? No? Okay. Well, Dr. Boyles, why don't we just work with Fred and Bill, and we'll just find a time during one of our weekends that they will share their presentation with us.
Okay, we'll plan on that next class weekend in October. We'll plan on that. Okay. Any other questions or things tonight that we need to discuss? Anybody? Okay. Well, I hope everybody has a good weekend. Dr. Abernathy, I'm going to need you, I think, to stop the record. I don't think I can do that.